The message arrived at exactly 0600 hours ship time. Admiral Hyun Tae-young was drinking his morning coffee when the communications officer rushed into his quarters. The young woman's face was pale and her hands shook as she handed him the datapad. "Sir, you need to see this immediately," she said. Hyun took the pad and read the message. His expression did not change, but his fingers tightened around the device. After 200 years of careful peace, the moment he had trained for his entire life had finally arrived. The Velxan Galactic Empire wanted to cross through human territory. Hyun stood up and walked to the window of his flagship. Outside, the stars looked peaceful and calm. His ship, the TSS Vigilance, hung in space near the border checkpoint. 11 other Terran vessels floated nearby, their running lights blinking in the darkness. Beyond them, the border stretched across the void. On the other side was Velxan space. "Call a command meeting," Hyun said. "All senior officers." 30 minutes, the officer saluted and left. Hyun read the message again, this time more slowly. The Velxans were not asking permission. They were informing humanity of their decision. Grand Marshal Thexler, commander of their military forces, had written the message himself. His words were clear and direct. The Velxan Empire needed to move a military fleet through human space to attack their enemy, the Synthetic Collective. The fastest route passed through 17 human star systems. Humanity had 48 hours to agree. If they refused, the Empire would consider it an act of war. Hyun almost laughed. The arrogance was stunning. The Velxan Empire controlled 10,000 star systems. They had conquered 47 different alien species over the past 1,000 years. Their military was legendary across the galaxy. And they thought humanity would simply step aside because they demanded it. They had no idea who they were dealing with. 30 minutes later, Hyun stood in the command center with his senior staff. Captain Nari Song was there, his strategic operations officer. She was young but brilliant, with a mind that could calculate battle scenarios faster than most computers. Next to her stood Ambassador Jiho Kwan, the diplomatic representative from Earth. "Opinions," Hyun said, getting straight to the point. "They're testing us," Nari said immediately. "The Velxans have been watching our borders for decades. They want to see if we'll back down." "The diplomatic angle is hopeless," Jiho added. "I've studied Velxan culture extensively. They respect only strength and force. Any attempt at negotiation will be seen as weakness." "What about their military capabilities?" Hyun asked. Nari pulled up a holographic display. Images of Velxan warships appeared in the air above the conference table. The ships were massive, each one 3 times larger than a Terran destroyer. Their hulls were covered in weapon ports and shield generators. "Their fleet is impressive by galactic standards," Nari said. "Plasma lances that can melt through most armor. Reality shielding technology that bends space around their ships. Energy weapons that can destroy a city from orbit. They've crushed every opponent they've ever faced. But they've never faced us," Hyun said quietly. Nari smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. "No, sir. They have not." Jiho leaned forward. "Admiral, I must advise caution. If we refuse their demand, they will attack. The Empire has 300 warships moving toward our border right now. We have 12 ships at this checkpoint." "I'm aware of the numbers, Ambassador." "Then you must see that resistance is suicide," Jiho said. Hyun turned to face the diplomat. His voice was calm but carried the weight of absolute certainty. "Ambassador Kwan, humanity did not spend 200 years preparing for this moment just to surrender at the first threat. We knew this day would come. The Velxans think we're weak because we're small. They think we're afraid because we've stayed within our borders. They're wrong on both counts." "What are you saying, Admiral?" "I'm saying the border is closed. No exceptions." Jiho's face went pale. "You're going to start a war with the most powerful empire in the galaxy." "No," Hyun said. "They're going to start a war with humanity. There's a difference." He turned back to Nari. "Send my response to the Velxan Grand Marshal. Use standard diplomatic channels so everyone can see it. I want the entire galaxy to know where we stand." Nari nodded and began typing. "What should I say, sir?" "Keep it simple. Tell them this. Terran Command has received your message. The border is closed. Any unauthorized crossing will be considered an act of war. We will defend our territory with all available force. That is our final answer." "That's it?" Jiho asked. "No room for negotiation? No diplomatic language?" "They don't want diplomacy, Ambassador. They want submission. I'm telling them no." Hyun looked at each person in the room. For 200 years, we've avoided galactic politics. We've stayed quiet and built our strength. The other species think we're hiding because we're afraid. The truth is, we've been preparing. He walked to the window and looked out at the stars again. Every ship in our fleet is designed for one purpose: defense. Every weapon we've created has been tested and refined. Every strategy has been calculated. We don't have the biggest military in the galaxy, but we have the most focused one, and now the Velksans are about to learn what that means. Nari finished typing and looked up. Message ready, sir. Should I send it? Send it. The message went out across space at faster than light speed. It would reach the Velksan fleet in less than an hour. Hyun imagined Grand Marshal Thexler reading it, probably laughing at human stubbornness. Let him laugh. He would not be laughing for long. All ships, Hyun ordered. Battle stations. I want weapon systems online and crews at maximum readiness. Activate the sensor grid across all 17 border systems. If a Velksan ship so much as crosses the line by 1 meter, I want to know immediately. Yes, sir, Nari said. Officers began moving throughout the command center. Screens lit up with tactical displays. Ships across the fleet powered up their weapons. The peaceful border zone suddenly transformed into a fortress. Jiho stood to the side, watching everything with worried eyes. Admiral, are you certain about this? Millions of lives could be lost. Hyun turned to face him. When he spoke, his voice carried no doubt. Ambassador, if we surrender now, those millions will become slaves. The Velksans don't offer peace. They offer subjugation. Every species they've conquered has lost their freedom, their culture, and their future. That will not happen to humanity. Not while I draw breath, but what if we lose? Then we lose fighting. That's better than living on our knees. 37 hours later, the Velksan response arrived. It was not a message. It was a fleet. 300 warships dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the border. They formed a massive wall of metal and weapons stretching across space like a dark ocean. Each ship bristled with guns. Their engines glowed with power. At the center of the formation was the flagship of Grand Marshal Thexler. It was twice the size of any other vessel, a floating fortress of destruction. Hyun stood on the bridge of the Vigilance, watching the enemy fleet appear on his screens. Around him, his crew worked silently. No one spoke. No one needed to. They're hailing us, the communications officer said. Put it through. Grand Marshal Thexler appeared on the main screen. He was a tall creature with 4 arms and scaled skin. His eyes were cold and calculating. When he spoke, his voice was filled with contempt. Human commander, this is your final warning. Stand aside or be destroyed. You cannot win. You cannot even survive. This is your last chance to save your species from extinction. Hyun looked at the alien general for a long moment. Then he smiled. It was a cold smile, the kind that made his own crew nervous. Grand Marshal, you have entered Terran space without authorization. You have threatened human lives and sovereignty. Under Terran law, that is an act of war. You have one chance to turn around and leave. If you cross that border, we will defend it with everything we have. That is our only offer, Thexler laughed. It was a harsh, grating sound. You amuse me, human. Very well. Let us see how brave you are when your ships are burning. The transmission ended. Hyun turned to his crew. All ships, stand ready. Fire only on my command. The Velksan fleet began to move forward. 300 warships carrying enough firepower to destroy planets. Against them stood 12 human vessels. The border war had begun. Commander Suji Park watched the enemy fleet approach her position. She stood on the bridge of the TSS Indomitable, a Terran destroyer that looked small and fragile compared to the massive Velksan warships. Her crew was silent, waiting for orders. Everyone knew what was coming. Enemy fleet entering weapons range in 90 seconds, Lieutenant Daehyun Choi reported from the weapons station. His voice was steady despite the impossible odds they faced. Suji had been a naval officer for 15 years. She had trained for combat her entire career, but never expected to actually see it. Humanity had been at peace for 2 centuries. Now that peace was ending and she was standing at the front line. All ships report ready, her communications officer said. Admiral Hyun is holding position behind us. He's given us tactical command of the vanguard. Suji nodded. The Terran fleet was divided into 3 groups. Her ship and 3 others formed the front line. 4 ships held the middle position. The remaining 4, including the Admiral's flagship, waited in reserve. It seemed like a desperate formation against 300 enemy vessels. The Velksans thought so too. Their lead commander, Fleet Admiral Kraxaval, had sent a mocking message an hour ago. He promised to capture the human ships intact and display them as trophies on his home world. He said humanity would make excellent servants for the Empire. Suji had not replied. She did not need to. Her ship would do her talking. 70 seconds, Daehyun called out. Activate stealth protocols, Suji ordered. All ships, weapons hot, but do not lock targets yet. Let them think we're easy prey. The Velxan fleet was moving in a standard attack formation. Their largest ships were at the front, shields glowing with power. Behind them came cruisers and destroyers. The formation was designed to overwhelm defenders with pure firepower. It was a formation that had conquered 47 different species. It had never failed. Today would be different. 50 seconds? Suji pulled up a tactical display on her personal screen. She studied the enemy ships carefully. Velxan technology was impressive, but it had one major weakness. Their shields were designed to stop energy weapons. Plasma lances, lasers, particle beams, all the standard weapons used by every other species in the galaxy. Humans did not use standard weapons. 30 seconds. Commander, they're powering up weapons, Daehyun reported. Multiple targeting locks detected. They're aiming for all our ships simultaneously. Let them target, Suji said calmly. Maintain stealth protocols. Wait for my command. The bridge crew exchanged glances. They trusted their commander, but this felt like suicide. The enemy fleet was so close now that they could see individual weapon ports opening on the massive alien ships. 20 seconds. Suji watched the clock count down. Her heart was beating fast, but her hands were steady. She thought about Earth, about her family back home. She thought about the 200 years of preparation that had led to this moment. Everything humanity had built was about to be tested. 10 seconds. Enemy weapons fully charged. All ships, Suji broadcast on the fleet channel. Activate quantum warfare suite. On my mark. 5 seconds. The Velxan ships fired. Hundreds of plasma lances and energy beams shot across space toward the human vessels. The attack was coordinated and devastating. No ship could survive such an assault. Mark. The Terran ships activated their electronic warfare systems. These were not simple jamming devices. They were quantum entanglement processors that could rewrite computer code at the subatomic level. In less than a second, every Velxan targeting system failed catastrophically. The enemy weapons fired wildly in random directions. Plasma lances shot off into empty space. Energy beams curved away from their targets. Some Velxan ships even hit each other as their weapons malfunctioned. Enemy targeting offline, Daehyun reported with satisfaction. They're trying to reset their systems. Don't give them time. All ships engage at will. Target their command vessels first. The Terran destroyers opened fire. Magnetic railguns launched projectiles at incredible speeds. These were not fancy energy weapons. They were simple metal slugs accelerated to 40% the speed of light. Each projectile carried more kinetic energy than a nuclear bomb. The Velxan shields, designed to bend and deflect energy, did nothing against solid matter moving at relativistic speeds. The first projectile hit a Velxan battleship directly in the center. The slug punched through the shield, through the armor, and through the entire ship. The vessel exploded from the inside out. Direct hit. Enemy battleship destroyed. Keep firing. Cycle targets. Don't give them time to adapt. The 4 Terran destroyers fired again and again. Each shot was carefully calculated. Each shot found its mark. Velxan ships exploded one after another, torn apart by weapons they had never encountered before. Fleet Admiral Kraxaval watched his fleet die around him. His bridge was in chaos. Officers shouted conflicting orders. Alarms blared from every station. Half his ships were not responding to commands. The other half were being destroyed faster than he could count. What is happening? He roared. Why are the shields not working? The human weapons are kinetic, sir. Physical projectiles. Our shields cannot stop them. Then use evasive maneuvers. Return fire! Our targeting systems are down. We cannot lock onto the human ships. Kraxaval slammed his fist against his command chair. This was impossible. His fleet was the pride of the Velxan military. They had crushed entire civilizations. How could 12 tiny human ships be destroying them? All vessels, emergency retreat. Fall back to the border! But retreating was harder than attacking. The Velxan ships were large and slow. They needed time to turn around and accelerate. Time they did not have. Suji watched the enemy formation collapse. They're retreating.
Should we pursue?
Negative. Admiral Hyun's voice came through her communicator. Hold position. Let them run. We're defenders, not conquerors. Understood, sir. The battle lasted 7 minutes. In that time, 83 Velxan ships were destroyed. The survivors fled back across the border in complete disarray. Not a single human ship was damaged. Daehyun stared at his tactical screen in disbelief. Commander, we just fought 300 enemy ships and won without taking a hit. It's not about numbers, Suji said quietly. It's about preparation. We spent 200 years getting ready for this exact scenario. They spent 200 years assuming no one would dare fight back. She looked at her crew. They were exhausted and shaking with adrenaline, but they were also proud. They had just made history. Good work, everyone. Stand down from battle stations but maintain alert status. The Velxans will be back. How do you know, sir? A young officer asked. Suji smiled grimly. Because we just humiliated the most powerful empire in the galaxy. They cannot let that stand. They will send everything they have at us next time. She was right. 3 light-years away, Fleet Admiral Kraxivol was sending an emergency message to the Velxan homeworld. His hands shook as he recorded the transmission. Emperor Zaltheris, I must report a catastrophic defeat. The humans, they fight like nothing we have ever encountered. Our shields are useless. Our weapons cannot target them. They destroyed 83 ships in minutes. I request immediate reinforcements. I request the full might of the Imperial Armada. He paused, struggling to find words to describe what he had witnessed. These humans are not primitives. They are not weak. They are dangerous. More dangerous than anything we have faced in 1,000 years. If we do not commit everything, we will lose this war. The message was sent. Within hours, it reached the Emperor's throne room on the Velxan capital world. Emperor Zaltheris read the report 3 times. Then he summoned his military council. The humans have humiliated us, he said coldly. This cannot be tolerated. Prepare the 5th Imperial Armada. 2,000 ships. 500,000 soldiers. I want the human border crushed. I want their planets occupied. I want them to understand the price of defying the Empire. Your Majesty, is that wise? One advisor dared to ask. Perhaps we should negotiate. Negotiate? The Emperor's voice was like ice. With insects who dare to challenge us? No. We will teach the galaxy what happens when anyone defies the Velxan Empire. Send the Armada. Destroy them all. The order was given. Across Velxan space, ships began to gather. The largest military force in the Empire's history was being assembled. Their target was humanity. Back at the border, Suji stood at the window of her ship looking out at the stars. She knew the Velxans would return. She knew the next battle would be much worse. But she also knew something else. Humanity had proven it could fight. They had proven they could win. And they had sent a message to the entire galaxy. The border was closed, and no one, not even the mighty Velxan Empire, could cross it without paying a terrible price. Commander Suji Park smiled. Let them come. Humanity would be ready. The war had only just begun. The news of humanity's victory spread across the galaxy like wildfire. On 1,000 different worlds, conquered species whispered about the impossible. The Velxan Empire, undefeated for a millennium, had been beaten by a small human fleet. On Earth, General Hana Yoon stood in the war room deep beneath Terran Command headquarters. Around her, holographic displays showed the entire border region. Red markers indicated Velxan fleet movements. Blue markers showed human defensive positions. The red markers were multiplying fast. Intelligence reports confirmed. An officer announced, the Velxan 5th Imperial Armada is mobilizing. Current count is 2,000 warships. They're gathering at staging points across their territory. Hana studied the display with calm eyes. She had expected this. The Velxans could not allow their defeat to stand unchallenged. Now they would throw everything at humanity to restore their damaged pride. Time until they reach the border? 72 hours, General. 3 days. Hana nodded slowly. Begin Operation Fortress. I want every defensive system online within 48 hours. And someone get me Engineer Lee. We need the border lattice fully activated. Across the room, Dr. Sora Lim was examining data from the first battle. She was a xenobiology expert who had spent years studying captured Velxan communications. Now her expertise was crucial. General Yoon, Sora called out. I've finished analyzing the prisoners we recovered from destroyed Velxan ships. What did you find? Sora pulled up biological scans on a nearby screen. The Velxans are physically impressive. Strong, fast, and naturally aggressive. But there's something interesting about their military psychology. They have no experience with prolonged warfare. Explain. Every war they've ever fought has been won through overwhelming force in the opening attack. Shock and awe. They land massive fleets, crush resistance immediately, and occupy the conquered territory. The average Velxan war lasts less than a month. Hana saw where this was going. They don't know how to fight a long campaign. Exactly. They've never faced an enemy that could withstand their initial assault. They have no doctrine for extended conflicts. No strategy for attrition warfare. Once we prove we can resist their first attack, they'll be operating outside their entire military history. That gives us an advantage, Hana said. But only if we can survive that first attack. 2,000 ships is not something we can beat with 12 destroyers. Which is why we're not going to fight them ship to ship, said a new voice. Engineer Min-Ho Lee walked into the war room carrying a data tablet. He was a thin man with tired eyes, but his mind was brilliant. For 20 years, he had been building humanity's ultimate defense. The border lattice is ready, Min-Ho announced. Hana felt relief wash over her. Show me. Min-Ho activated his tablet and the main holographic display changed. The border region appeared. But now millions of tiny dots lit up across the entire area. They were scattered throughout asteroids, hidden in debris fields disguised as space junk. Each dot represented an automated defense platform. 200 years of preparation, Min-Ho said with quiet pride. We have 8 million defense platforms distributed across the border zone. Each one is autonomous but connected through quantum networking. They function as a single distributed intelligence. What can they do against 2,000 warships? An officer asked skeptically. Min-Ho smiled. Everything. Each platform carries railgun batteries, missile launchers, and electronic warfare systems. Individually, they're weak, but together they form a defensive network that can adapt and respond faster than any organic commander. The Velxans will be fighting an enemy that thinks at the speed of light and attacks from every direction simultaneously. Hana examined the display carefully. Casualties? Human casualties should be minimal if the lattice performs as designed. We'll lose platforms, certainly, maybe millions of them. But platforms can be replaced. People cannot. Activate it. Full deployment. I want every system armed and ready before the Velxans arrive. Yes, General. As Min-Ho left to coordinate the activation, Admiral Hyun entered the war room. He looked tired but determined. The past 3 days had been exhausting as he repositioned the fleet and prepared for the coming storm. General Yoon, he greeted her. I have a request. Go ahead, Admiral. Let me take the fight to them. We have stealth ships that could strike deep into Velxan territory, hit their supply lines, destroy their staging areas. No, Hyun's jaw tightened. General, with respect, we have the element of surprise. They think we're purely defensive. A strike force could cripple their war effort before it begins. Hana shook her head. Admiral, I understand your frustration, but the Terran Council has made its position clear. We defend what is ours. We do not invade. We do not conquer. The moment we cross into their territory, we become the aggressors. We lose the moral high ground that has kept the galaxy's sympathy on our side. The galaxy's sympathy won't help us when 2,000 ships are burning our worlds. Those ships will never reach our worlds. The border lattice will stop them. And when it does, the galaxy will see that we only fight in self-defense. That matters, Admiral. It matters for what comes after this war. Hyun wanted to argue further, but he knew she was right. Instead, he changed the subject. What about ground forces? If the Velxans break through, they'll try to land troops on our border colonies. My Marines are ready, Hana said. We've been training for ground combat against Velxan forces for decades. If they manage to land troops, they'll discover that humans are very good at fighting on our own territory. She pulled up training records on the display. Every Marine in the Terran Corps has studied Velxan tactics. We know their weapons, their formations, their strategies. More importantly, we've developed countermeasures for everything they can throw at us. What kind of countermeasures? Hana smiled grimly. Velxan soldiers are strong and aggressive. They rely on frontal assault supported by heavy weapons. They've never fought an enemy that uses guerrilla tactics, hit-and-run attacks, or asymmetric warfare. Our Marines will bleed them dry. On the Velxan homeworld, Emperor Zaltheris stood in his throne room receiving reports from across the Empire. The news was not good. 3 subject species had attempted rebellions in the past 2 days, inspired by humanity's defiance. All three uprisings had been crushed, but the message was clear. The Empire's authority was being questioned. "The Fifth Armada is ready, Your Majesty," reported War Priest Dralix. He was the Emperor's chief military advisor, a veteran of countless conquests. "Commander Velkrath has been given overall command. He promises to erase the humans from existence." "See that he does," the Emperor said coldly. "The galaxy is watching. If we appear weak, others will follow humanity's example. This rebellion must be crushed completely and publicly." "What of the humans' defensive capabilities, Your Majesty?" Fleet Admiral Craxville reported that their weapons penetrated our shields easily, then developed new shields, or overwhelm them with numbers. "I do not care how it is done, only that it is done. The Fifth Armada is the largest force we have ever assembled. It should be more than sufficient to destroy a species that controls only 127 star systems." Dralix bowed. "As you command. However, I must advise caution. The humans have demonstrated unexpected technological sophistication. Perhaps we should study them further before committing our full strength." The Emperor's eyes flashed with anger. "Are you suggesting we negotiate with them?" "No, Your Majesty. Only that we approach them as worthy opponents rather than primitive insects. They are insects. Insects that need to be crushed before their example spreads. Send the Armada. Show the galaxy what happens when anyone defies the Velxan Empire." Back at the border, the activation of the border lattice was complete. In the command center of Outpost Meridian, Minho Lee watched his creation come online. 8 million defense platforms synchronized their systems, forming a single vast intelligence network that spanned light years. "All systems green," he reported to General Yoon. "The lattice is fully operational." "Test the response time," Hana ordered. Minho input a simulation into the system. A hypothetical enemy fleet appeared in the tactical display. Instantly, the lattice responded. Millions of calculations occurred in microseconds. Optimal firing solutions appeared. Kill zones were established. Escape routes were blocked. The simulation enemy was destroyed before it could fire a shot. "Response time is 0.03 seconds from detection to engagement," Minho said with satisfaction. "The Velxans won't know what hit them." Admiral Hyun, watching from his flagship, felt a grim satisfaction. The Empire was bringing 2,000 ships to crush humanity. They thought their numbers would ensure victory. They were about to learn that in modern warfare, numbers meant nothing compared to preparation and technology. A message came through from Terran Command. It was a general broadcast to all human military forces across the border region. "All personnel, this is Terran Command. The Velxan 5th Imperial Armada will reach the border in approximately 48 hours. They come with overwhelming force, expecting easy victory. They believe we will break under pressure. They believe we will surrender to save ourselves. They are wrong. For 200 years we have prepared for this moment. Every ship, every weapon, every system we have built was designed for one purpose: to defend our freedom against any threat, no matter how large. Today, that purpose will be fulfilled. The Velxans think they are the greatest military power in the galaxy. Let us show them the difference between conquest and defense. Let us show them what humanity is capable of when we fight for our homes, our families, and our future. Stand ready, stand together, and remember, we are not fighting to conquer the galaxy. We are fighting to protect what is ours. That is our strength. That is why we will prevail." Terran Command out. Across the border, on hundreds of ships and stations, human personnel checked their weapons and prepared for battle. They were outnumbered 100 to 1. The odds were impossible, but they were human, and humans had never let impossible odds stop them before. The countdown began. 48 hours until the Empire arrived. 48 hours until humanity proved that borders meant something. 48 hours until the galaxy learned a new lesson about underestimating the species from Earth. The Velxan 5th Imperial Armada arrived at the border exactly when predicted. 2,000 warships dropped out of faster-than-light travel in perfect formation. It was the largest military force assembled in galactic history. From a distance, the fleet looked like a dark cloud blocking out the stars. On board the flagship Emperor's Wrath, Commander Velkrath surveyed his forces with satisfaction. He was a decorated warrior who had led campaigns against 17 different species. All had fallen before him. The humans would be no different. "All ships report ready, Commander," his tactical officer announced. "Excellent. Begin the advance. Standard conquest formation. Destroy any human vessels that resist. Once we break through their defensive line, proceed to the nearest human colony world. We will make an example of them. The massive fleet began moving forward, 2,000 ships all heavily armed, all crewed by experienced soldiers. They advanced slowly, deliberately, showing their strength. This was meant to terrify the defenders into surrender. Admiral Hyun watched them come. He stood on the bridge of the TSS Vigilance with his command staff around him. The tactical displays showed the enormous enemy fleet approaching like a wall of death. "They're trying to intimidate us," Captain Nari Song observed. "Let them try," Hyun said calmly. "All ships maintain position. Do not fire until they cross the borderline. Engineer Lee, is the lattice ready?" From the command center on Outpost Meridian, Minho Lee's voice came through. "All 8 million platforms are armed and synchronized, Admiral. The lattice is tracking every Velxan ship. As soon as they cross into our territory, we can engage. Wait for my signal. I want them fully committed before we reveal our hand." The Velxan fleet drew closer. They were 100 kilometers from the border. Then 50. Then 20. "Sir, they're crossing the line," Nari reported. "Hold," Hyun ordered. The enemy fleet pushed deeper into human space. 5 kilometers. 10 kilometers. Velkrath had spread his forces wide, trying to divide human attention across multiple points. It was a classic overwhelming force tactic. 20 kilometers inside the border, Velkrath gave the order. "All ships engage at will. Destroy everything." 2,000 warships opened fire simultaneously. The amount of energy released was enough to sterilize a planet. Plasma lances and energy beams lit up the void, all aimed at the small human fleet. "Now," Admiral Hyun said quietly. The border lattice activated. 8 million defense platforms came online at once. They had been invisible until this moment, hiding among asteroids and debris disguised as worthless space junk. Now they revealed themselves and opened fire. The effect was devastating. The Velxan fleet suddenly found itself inside a killing zone, surrounded on all sides by weapons fire. Railgun projectiles came from every direction. Missiles appeared from hidden launchers. Electronic warfare signals jammed communication systems. But that was not the worst part. The worst part was how the lattice fought. Each platform was connected to every other platform through quantum networking. They did not operate as 8 million separate units. They operated as a single intelligence with 8 million eyes and 8 million weapons. The lattice calculated trajectories, predicted movements, and coordinated fire patterns faster than any organic mind could comprehend. When a Velxan ship tried to evade, the lattice had already predicted where it would move. When a group of ships tried to coordinate their shields, the lattice concentrated fire on the weak points. When commanders tried to communicate new orders, the lattice jammed their frequencies and inserted false commands. Velkrath watched in growing horror as his mighty fleet was torn apart. Ships exploded around him constantly. Every few seconds, another vessel died. His tactical displays were filled with red warning indicators. "Shields are ineffective against their kinetic weapons, Commander. We cannot stop them." "Then attack their platforms." "Destroy them!" "We're trying, sir." "But there are millions of them. For every one we destroy, 10 more target us." Velkrath realized the terrible truth. He had brought 2,000 ships to crush a handful of human vessels. Instead, he had led his fleet into a trap. The humans had not tried to match the Empire's military strength. They had simply made it irrelevant. In space, Captain Junho Kim led his stealth team through the chaos. His small ship was invisible to Velxan sensors, using technology that bent light around the hull. While the massive battle raged, Junho's mission was more subtle. "Target acquired," his pilot reported. "Velxan command cruiser disabled but intact. Take us in. We need that data." The stealth ship docked with the crippled Velxan vessel. Junho and his team moved through the empty corridors in full combat gear. They found the ship's computer core and began extracting information. What they discovered made Junho's blood run cold. "Command, this is Stealth Team 7. You need to hear this. The Velxans never intended to just cross our space. They planned full annexation. Documents here show plans for occupying 17 human systems, enslaving the populations and absorbing our territory into the Empire." Admiral Hyun's voice came back immediately. "Are you certain?" "Absolutely certain, sir. This was never about passage rights. It was about conquest. They were going to do to us what they've done to 47 other species. Copy that, stealth team. Extract all data and return to base. Good work. Junho and his team copied everything they could find and retreated to their ship. Behind them, the battle continued to rage. High above the battlefield, pilot Yuna Han led her fighter squadron through the enemy fleet. Her small craft was incredibly fast and maneuverable. Where the massive Velxan battleships needed kilometers to turn, she could pivot on a single point. Strike Team 4, follow my lead. We're going after their carrier group. Right behind you, Captain. Yuna dove through a debris field created by destroyed ships. Her fighter's computer tracked dozens of targets simultaneously. She selected the largest one, a Velxan carrier ship that was launching smaller attack craft. Locked. Firing. Her missiles streaked across space and impacted the carrier's launch bay. The explosion was spectacular, tearing the entire front section off the massive ship. Velxan fighters that were preparing to launch tumbled into space. That's 23 confirmed kills, her wingman reported. Personal record, Captain. Save the celebration. We're not done yet. Over the next 3 days, the battle raged without pause. The Velxan fleet, trapped inside the border lattice, could not escape and could not advance. Every hour, more ships were destroyed. Every hour, the humans refined their tactics and increased their effectiveness. Commander Velkrath tried everything. He attempted to break out. He tried to concentrate his forces and punch through weak points. He even tried to ram human ships, hoping to trade losses for progress. Nothing worked. The lattice adapted to every tactic instantly. What worked once never works twice. The humans fought like they could read his mind. On the 4th day, War Priest Dralix contacted Emperor Zaltheris from the battle zone. He had arrived with reinforcements but stopped at the border when he saw the carnage. Your Majesty, the 5th Armada is destroyed. Less than 300 ships remain operational. Commander Velkrath is requesting permission to retreat. There was a long silence. Then the Emperor's voice came through, cold with fury. What of the humans? Their losses? Minimal, Your Majesty. They have lost perhaps 200 vessels, mostly small destroyers and fighters. Their casualty reports show 31,000 dead. We have lost over 800,000. Another long silence. When the Emperor spoke again, his voice was different, quieter, more dangerous. How is this possible? We sent 2,000 ships. How are they still standing? They have turned the entire border region into a fortress, Your Majesty. Millions of automated weapons platforms, advanced electronic warfare, tactics we have never encountered. They have been preparing for this fight for 200 years. Dralix hesitated. We have never faced an enemy like this. Deploy the extinction weapons, the Emperor ordered suddenly. Planet killers, biological warfare. If we cannot defeat them conventionally, we will erase them completely. Dralix felt ice in his veins. Your Majesty, such weapons are forbidden by galactic law. I do not care. They have humiliated the Empire. They must be destroyed. Before Dralix could respond, Admiral Hyun's voice cut into the transmission. The human had hacked their secure communications. Emperor Zaltheris, I am Admiral Hyun Taeyang of Terran Command. I have been listening to your conversation with interest. How dare you, if you deploy weapons of extinction, understand this. For 200 years, we have mapped every major world in your empire. We have sleeper ships positioned throughout your territory, ships you cannot detect, ships carrying enough weapons to sterilize planets. If you use extinction weapons against us, we will respond in kind. Every core world of the Velxan Empire will burn. You're bluffing. No species would. We are human, Hyun interrupted. We do not bluff about survival. Test me and you will learn what total war means. Your empire will not recover from what we will do to you. Emperor Zaltheris pulled up intelligence reports frantically. His analysts confirmed it. They had detected anomalies in Velxan space for years, strange readings near populated worlds, objects that appeared to be derelict ships but never quite matched any known signatures. The humans had been infiltrating Imperial space for decades. They had positioned weapons of mass destruction throughout the Empire's territory. They had been preparing not just to defend, but to retaliate with overwhelming force if necessary. You would destroy billions of innocents? The Emperor asked, his voice shaking. We would do what is necessary to protect our species, Hyun replied. Just as you were prepared to do. The difference is we hoped it would never come to this. You chose to cross our border. You chose to threaten us with extinction. We are simply ensuring mutual destruction if you continue down that path. For the first time in his life, Emperor Zaltheris felt fear, real genuine fear. The humans were not bluffing. They had planned for every scenario. They had turned their isolation into a weapon. "Stand down," he ordered Drolix quietly. "No extinction weapons. Begin retreat protocols for all forces. We need to reconsider our approach." The transmission ended. In the border zone, the surviving Velxan ships began to withdraw. The mighty Fifth Armada, reduced to broken fragments, fled back across the border. Behind them, human forces held their positions. Admiral Hyun stood on his bridge, watching the enemy retreat. Around him, his crew was exhausted but victorious. They had done the impossible. They had stopped the greatest military force in the galaxy. "Sir," Captain Nari said quietly. "We won. We survived," Hyun corrected.
The war isn't over.
"But we proved something important today. We proved that humanity cannot be conquered. That has to count for something." In the command center, General Hana Yoon received casualty reports. 31,000 dead. It was a terrible price, but it could have been so much worse. She thought about the Velxan soldiers who had died. 800,000 of them. Young people following orders, dying for an empire that saw them as expendable. War was never glorious. It was only necessary, and today it had been very necessary indeed. 37 days after the first shot was fired, the war ended. Not with a grand battle or a desperate last stand, but with a simple message transmitted across the border. The Velxan Empire requested negotiations. Ambassador Jiho Kwan read the message 3 times to make sure he understood correctly. The Empire, which had never negotiated with anyone in its 1,000-year history, was asking for peace talks. "They're serious," he said to Admiral Hyun. They were meeting in the Admiral's quarters aboard the TSS Vigilance. Through the window, damaged human ships were visible, undergoing repairs. Emperor Zaltharis himself signed the request. "What are our casualties at now?" Hyun asked quietly. "Final count is 31,000 dead, 78,000 wounded. We lost 247 ships." Jiho paused. "The Velxans lost 4,200 ships and over 830,000 personnel. The numbers hung in the air between them. So many dead on both sides. All because an empire thought it could simply take what it wanted." "When do they want to meet?" Hyun asked. "As soon as possible. They're sending their chief ambassador, a diplomat named Trelnax. He'll arrive at Outpost Meridian in 3 days. I'll inform Terran Command. We'll need representatives from the Council as well." 3 days later, a single Velxan ship approached the border under a white flag of truce. It was a small diplomatic vessel, unarmed and unescorted. The contrast with the massive war fleet that had attacked weeks earlier could not have been more stark. Ambassador Trelnax was an older Velxan, his scales dulled with age. He walked off his ship slowly as if every step pained him. When he met Ambassador Jiho in the conference room of Outpost Meridian, his forearms were empty of weapons, a sign of peaceful intent. "Ambassador Kwan," he greeted in accented but clear human language. "Thank you for agreeing to these talks. Ambassador Trelnax, please sit." The Velxan diplomat settled into a chair designed for his species' unusual anatomy. Admiral Hyun was there as well, standing near the window. Also present was Counselor Minji Bayek, a senior member of the Terran Council who had traveled from Earth specifically for these negotiations. "Before we begin," Trelnax said, "I must apologize. On behalf of the Velxan Empire, I apologize for our aggression, for our arrogance, and for the deaths we have caused. This war should never have happened." Jiho studied the alien diplomat carefully. Trelnax seemed genuine, but appearances could be deceiving. "Why did it happen, Ambassador? Why did your empire insist on crossing our border?" "Because we have spent 1,000 years believing we were invincible," Trelnax said simply. "We saw your small territory and assumed you were weak. We demanded passage because we never imagined anyone would dare refuse us. We were wrong. Catastrophically wrong. You were planning full conquest," Admiral Hyun said from the window. "We recovered documents from your damaged ships. This was never about passage. You intended to occupy our systems and enslave our people." Trelnax's shoulders slumped. "Yes, I will not lie to you. That was the plan. We have done it to 47 species before you. Each time they resisted briefly and then surrendered. We expected the same from humans. But we didn't surrender," Jiho said. "No, you fought. You fought in ways we never imagined. You used weapons and tactics that none of our military doctrine could counter. You turned your entire border into a fortress that rendered our numerical superiority meaningless. And most importantly," Trelnax paused, choosing his words carefully, You were willing to destroy us completely if we tried to destroy you. That threat of mutual annihilation changed everything. Counselor Minji Bayek spoke for the first time. Ambassador Trelnax, why should we trust anything your empire says? You came to conquer us. You failed. Now you want peace. But what happens when you rebuild your fleet? What happens when you decide to try again? That will not happen, Counselor. The empire is changing. Your victory has had consequences we never anticipated. Explain, Minji ordered. Trelnax pulled out a datapad and displayed a map of Velxan territory. Sections of it were highlighted in red. These are rebellion zones. Subject species that have risen up against Imperial rule in the past month. They were inspired by your successful defense. They now believe resistance is possible. How many species are rebelling? Shiho asked. 14. With more joining every day. The Empire is facing internal collapse. We can no longer maintain control through fear alone. Your victory proved that the Empire is not invincible. That knowledge is spreading like a fire through our territory. Admiral Hyun moved from the window to the table. So you want us to help you maintain control over your slave species? No, Trelnax said firmly. We want peace. We want to prevent this war from destroying everything, and we want guidance. Humans achieved something remarkable. You maintained your freedom and sovereignty for 200 years while surrounded by hostile forces. You built a defensive system that stopped the largest fleet in the galaxy. We need to learn from you. Learn what? Minji asked skeptically. How to change. How to transform from an empire of conquest to something better. Emperor Zaltheris understands now that the old ways have failed. We cannot continue as we have. But we do not know how to do anything else. The three humans exchanged glances. This was unexpected. The Velxan Empire asking for help from the species it had tried to destroy. We need to discuss this privately, Jiho said. Please wait here, Ambassador. The three humans moved to an adjoining room. As soon as the door closed, Minji spoke first. This could be a trick. A way to infiltrate our territory and learn our weaknesses. Possibly, Hyun agreed. But I don't think so. We've been monitoring Velxan space. The intelligence confirms what Trelnax said. Their empire is fracturing. Multiple rebellions are underway. They're losing control, which makes them dangerous, Minji countered. A cornered animal is more likely to lash out, or more likely to seek genuine peace, Jiho suggested. Think about what we've accomplished. We didn't just defend our border. We demonstrated that their entire system of conquest and domination is obsolete. In the modern age with advanced technology, defense is easier than offense. We proved that small nations can successfully resist large empires. Hyun nodded slowly. If we help the rebelling species establish their own defenses, the empire won't be able to reconquer them. The balance of power shifts permanently. That's a massive commitment, Minji said. Sharing our technology, training their militaries, helping dozens of species achieve independence. It would take decades, but it would ensure our security, Jiho argued. An empire surrounded by strong, independent neighbors cannot wage wars of conquest. The Velxans would have to become a peaceful civilization or be destroyed by their former subjects. They debated for another hour before reaching a decision. When they returned to the conference room, Trelnax looked up hopefully. We have our terms, Jiho announced. The border remains permanently closed. No Velxan ships will enter human space without explicit permission. The Empire will formally recognize human sovereignty and territorial integrity. Agreed, Trelnax said immediately. Furthermore, Minji continued, the Terran Confederacy will provide defensive technology and training to all species currently under Velxan control. Not weapons of aggression, defensive systems only. Enough to allow them to protect themselves and choose their own futures. Trelnax was silent for a long moment. You want to help our subject species rebel against us? We want to give them the same choice we had, Hyun said. The choice to be free. If they choose to remain part of your empire, that is their decision. But it must be a choice, not forced servitude. The Emperor will never agree to this. It means the end of the Empire as we know it. The Empire as you knew it ended 37 days ago, Jiho said firmly. The question now is what comes next. You can resist change and watch your civilization tear itself apart in civil wars. Or you can accept change and transform into something better, a confederation of equals instead of an empire of masters and slaves. And if we refuse your terms? Then the war continues, Admiral Hyun said quietly. And next time we won't fight on the border. We'll bring the war to your core worlds. We have the capability. We've proven we have the will. I promise you, Ambassador, you do not want to see what humanity is capable of when we go on the offensive. It was not a threat. It was a simple statement of fact. And Trelnax knew it was true. I will take your terms to the Emperor, he said finally, but I cannot promise he will accept them. 2 weeks later, the reply came. Emperor Zaltharis agreed to all terms. The formal treaty was signed aboard the TSS Indomitable, the ship that had won the first battle of the war. Commander Suji Park, captain of the Indomitable, watched the signing ceremony from the bridge. She had lost 37 crew members in the war. Their names were engraved on a memorial wall in the ship's main corridor. Every day she passed that wall and remembered their sacrifice. Commander, Lieutenant Daehyun Choi approached her. The ceremony is complete. The treaty is official. Good, Suji said quietly. Maybe now we can start rebuilding. Do you think they'll honor it? The Velksans? Suji looked out at the stars. They'll honor it because they have no choice. We changed the rules of galactic politics. We proved that conquest doesn't work anymore. Defense is too strong. Technology has made empires obsolete, so what happens now? Now we help all those species the Velksans conquered. We give them the tools to defend themselves. And we watch as the galaxy transforms from empires and conquest to cooperation and mutual defense. That's optimistic. Commander, maybe. But 38 days ago, everyone thought we would be conquered and enslaved. Instead, we won a war against impossible odds. If we can do that, anything is possible. A year later, Ambassador Jiho Kwan stood on a stage at Terran Command Headquarters on Earth. He was addressing a gathering of diplomatic representatives from 23 different species. Many of them were former Velksan subjects who had successfully achieved independence with human help. A year ago, Jiho said, humanity stood alone against the greatest empire in the galaxy. We were told to submit or die. We chose neither. We chose to defend what was ours. We chose to fight for our freedom. Today we stand not alone but alongside friends, species who have chosen their own paths, who have built their own defenses, who have proven that freedom is worth fighting for. The Velksan Empire still exists, but it has changed. It is no longer an empire of conquest. It is becoming a confederation of partners. This transformation is not complete. It will take decades, perhaps centuries, but it has begun. And it began because humanity drew a line and said no further, because we refused to let others dictate our future, because we understood that sometimes peace must be defended with strength. Admiral Hyun Tae-yang stood at the back of the hall, listening to the speech. Beside him was General Hana Yoon and Engineer Min-ho Lee. They had all been awarded medals for their service during the war. But Hyun knew the real reward was not medals or honors. The real reward was watching a galaxy transform. We did it, Min-ho said quietly. We changed everything. We survived, Hyun corrected with a slight smile. And in surviving, we showed others how to survive too. Do you think there will be more wars? Hana asked. Probably. There are other empires out there. Other threats. But they've all seen what happened to the Velksans. They've learned the lesson. Maybe they'll think twice before trying to cross our border. And if they don't? Hyun's smile faded. Then we'll be ready. We're always ready. On the stage, Jiho concluded his speech. The border holds. Not just the human border, but borders everywhere. The right of every species to choose their own destiny. The right to say no to conquest and oppression. That is what we fought for. That is what we won. The galaxy has learned a new lesson. Never mistake human restraint for human weakness. Never assume that small nations cannot defend themselves. And never ever underestimate what people will do to protect their freedom. The border holds. And it always will. The hall erupted in applause. Representatives from dozens of worlds stood and cheered. The sound echoed through the building and out into the world beyond. Above Earth, in the silence of space, human warships patrolled the borders. The border lattice remained active, watching and waiting. New defensive platforms were being built every day, making the fortress even stronger. The Terran Confederacy had defended itself against impossible odds. In doing so, it had changed the fate of the galaxy. The border held, and humanity had ensured it would hold forever.